Chapter 9, Thank You Note. It was when Caroline was brushing her teeth the next morning that Wally returned the plate. She had been standing in front of the mirror practicing her lines for the play. Wait, little elf, maybe your idea is a good one. Maybe it would be more fun to do good tricks this Halloween and surprise the village people. When she heard the doorbell. Why, good morning, Wally. Or is it Jake or Josh or Peter? I'm never sure, came her father's voice. I'm Wally, came a second voice. I just wanted to return Mrs. Molloy's plate and tell her thank you very much. The pumpkin chiffon pie was delicious. I'll be sure to tell her, father said. Jean makes it every year. I like a big piece after a football game, provided we win, of course. Caroline came down after she heard the door close. Well, now maybe we're all friends again, Mother said to her. One of the Hatford boys returned my pie plate and said the pie was delicious, so I guess they really enjoyed it. Let's try and keep things this way, huh? Stay friends. Why not? Said Caroline. At the moment, Wally and his brothers were the last thing on her mind. It was the play that was important. Never mind that the 5th and 6th grades wouldn't see it, the others would, along with all their teachers, and people would remember her, so that when they were looking for someone to play a starring role in 5th or 6th. Good grief! Have some bread with your peanut butter, Mother said, watching Caroline make her lunch. You have enough peanut butter on that bread for 3 sandwiches, Caroline. Pay attention. Dost thou talk to thy queen in such a manner? Caroline asked. I dust, said Mother, and don't forget to pack some carrots and celery, milady. Well, class, we've got 1 week to the Halloween play, Miss Applebaum said, facing the 4th graders in her apple red dress. I still need 3 more boys, however, and if I don't get any volunteers, I'm going to have to volunteer for you. Come on now, it'll be fun. Your audience is only little kids, after all. Don't let it scare you. If you forget a line, so what? It's not the end of the world. Finally, one hand went up, then another. Okay, I've got everyone we need except a footman, and we need somebody strong. Wally Hatford, I choose you. Lunch hour rehearsal, don't forget. Wally Hatford, a footman? Right, thought Caroline. When she stood on the stage at lunchtime, Caroline remembered that the last time she was here, having sneaked in after lunch, Wally and some of the other 4th grade boys had sneaked in too, unknown to her, and were sitting in the dark in the back row listening to her read a beautiful passage from The Wind in the Willows. But now she was supposed to be here, with the light shining down on her and Miss Applebaum smiling in the second row, and sometimes when Miss Applebaum was showing someone else where to stand or how to gesture when he talked, Caroline tipped back her head and studied all the ropes and pulleys and lights and switches and knew that this was where she belonged, that she was doing what she was born to do. There was only one line at the very end of the play where someone had a better part than Caroline. That was when the fairy godmother of all the land, the woods, and glades came to the Goblin Queen and said, Isabel, all these years your hair has been matted and your skin has been wrinkled and rough and your toes and fingers crooked because you have looked the way you have lived. But because of these fine deeds you have performed this Halloween, you have shown the village people that beneath your dirty hair and crooked smile there is indeed a heart of gold. Whereupon she touched the Goblin Queen with her magic wand and flung off the ugly mask that Caroline would have been wearing to reveal the true beauty beneath. For just that one moment, Caroline would have liked to have been the fairy godmother of all the woods and glades, and she couldn't be both. And besides, right after that, her 2 footmen were supposed to help her sit down and say, Your throne, milady. And when she said, Call the other goblins that we may celebrate a Halloween of good deeds, Wally would say, I hear my queen and obey. When Wally came to those lines, however, his face turned red and he looked as though he had a mouthful of rocks. He looked as though he would rather choke than say them. Who are you talking to, Wally? The floor? Miss Applebaum called from her seat. Speak up. Look at Caroline when you talk. Don't mumble. I can't remember the lines. I'm not any good at this, Wally told her. Oh, pish-posh, the teacher said. You only have 2 lines to say in the whole play, Wally. Come on now. I know you can do it. Besides, if you forget a line, just make one up. Actors and actresses have to do that all the time. I hear my queen and obey, Wally said finally. Does life ever get better than this? Caroline wondered happily. Fall was perhaps the favorite season in the Molloy family. Father was happiest when football had really begun. Mother liked it when the long, hot days of summer were over at last. Eddie liked any season that was warm enough for her to stand outside and bounce a ball off the side of the garage. And Beth liked autumn especially because all the books that had been taken from the library for summer reading had been returned, and she had a much better selection to choose from, especially her favorite books such as The Spider's Sting, Mark the Mummy, and Scorpion People. But the seasons of the year meant absolutely nothing to Caroline as long as she was on stage. She and Beth and Eddie had just come back from the homecoming parade on Saturday and were raking leaves when Mr. Hatford came up the sidewalk with their mail. "Hello, girls," he said. "Your dad must have been mighty pleased the way his team beat Wheeling last night. Nice to have a winning team for a change. So how are you all doing?" "Fine," they answered together. Caroline took a chance. "How are the guys coming with their Halloween costumes?" Mr. Hatford scratched his head. "Come to think of it, I haven't heard a word out of them the past few days. All I get from Wally is griping about some play." Caroline grinned. "Aren't they even going to be in the Halloween parade?" "I imagine so. Just don't hear them talk much about it, that's all." Not much help from him, Caroline thought after he had gone. Was it possible the boys had just given up? Leaves fell down around them, and Caroline stretched her arms toward the sky and said, "Life's wonderful. The Goblin Queen is in her glory. I never want to go back to Ohio again. I want to stay right here and become known in Buckman, and someday, in the concrete outside the school, they will put a marker for me with my name on it saying Caroline Lenore Malloy first appeared on stage in this school." Her sisters groaned. The screen door slammed and Mother came down the steps. "Girls, look at this and tell me what you think. I just got a note from Mrs. Hatford, and this is what she said. 'Dear Mrs. Malloy, if you hadn't said you made that pie yourself, I would have sworn it came from Ethel's bakery. Thank you so much. It was delicious. Ellen Hatford.'" "Is that an insult or a compliment? I can't even tell." "She thinks you bought the pie?" asked Eddie. "It certainly sounds that way to me." "So isn't that a compliment?" asked Caroline. "Not to me, it's not. Not when it was Great Aunt Mina's recipe. Maybe she's just trying to take me down a peg, my bragging on about the recipe as I did. Oh, dear heaven, people were so much easier to get along with back in Ohio." After Mother went back in the house, Beth whispered, "What do you think happened to the pie? You don't think they threw it in the river, do you?" "Well, something happened to it, or they wouldn't have bought a store pie and tried to pass it off as homemade. I'm sure that's exactly what happened, too," Eddie said. "Maybe it was just so good that once they took a taste, they kept eating and couldn't stop." "I doubt it," said Eddie. At school on Monday, Caroline leaned forward and whispered, "Wally, Mom wants her pie back." Miss Applebaum was over in the corner, helping a group. "What?" "She says that since you didn't give it to your mother, she wants it back." Wally just stared. Well, nothing. We ate it." "Your mother didn't. How do you know?" "The Goblin Queen knows all." "Drop dead," said Wally. "If we win the costume contest, you'll have to say, 'I hear my queen and obey' for a whole month. Did you ever think of that?" "And if we win," Miss Applebaum turned around. "I hear people talking. Is that you, Caroline? Caroline and Wally? Suppose you share it with the class." "Just practicing our lines, Miss Applebaum," Caroline said sweetly.